Hello ladies and gents, I'm the Dapper Rat, and this is the third part of a 4-part upload, so be sure to check the previous parts to gain a better understanding of what's going on. However, for those of you with little time, here's a summary. Essentially, I'm clarifying my ideas to balance heroes by putting them in roles that gives them access to properties. These string of videos go over each property, where they belong, their strength in order to monitor how often it's used, and in part 4, we're going to balance a couple that are generally terrible for the game. That being said, let's resume where we left off. Next up, Uninterruptible Stance, or better known in the community as Hyper Armor. It is a property built around trading attacks. Essentially, if you are attacked, you won't be interrupted unless your enemy uses a bash. Now in ganks, Hyper Armor has very little use. You can use it to counter externals, but chances like that are few and far between unless you're a specific character. And in a team fight, you excel very well because not only can your opponents no longer interrupt you, but your teammate can't interrupt you either. Now within a duel, a tiny bit more brain power needs to be used as determining whether your Hyper Armor is going to be useful or a detriment, as it is a double-edged sword. In an anti-gank, it once again depends. While not being interrupted is very strong in an anti-gank, it can also be a detriment against super aggressive groups since they will just out DPS you. Overall, this puts Hyper Armor in the team fighter category. Next up, we have pins. Pins are a move that occupies both hero and opponent in an animation for an extended period of time. Pins are notorious for their strength in ganks, as keeping an opponent vulnerable for an extended period of time is a huge advantage. Now, when using it in a team fight, we enter more of a gray area as the pin becomes a double-edged sword. You're both locked in animation, and thus both are vulnerable to getting hit by either person's teammate. Now in a duel, pins are a non-factor. They have no added benefit whatsoever, but there is no disadvantage at all. In an anti-gank, pins are actively a detriment, as keeping yourself still and defenseless like a child in a ring of enemies is asking for, well, expiration, meaning pins earns its spot in ganking. Next up, we have recovery cancels. Recovery cancels allow you to cancel the recovery of certain moves, immediately letting you perform a specified one. Recovery cancels often come in a defensive variety, but still see great use in offense. In a gank, recovery cancels mean very little, as a defensive opponent won't make the mistake of falling for your recovery, and an offensive opponent still gains the benefit from externaling your teammate. Now in a team fight, your recovery cancels become very versatile, shifting the dynamic of a 2v2 into a 2v1 and a 1v1, with both your fights in your favor. Now when you look into a duel, you also greatly benefit from recovery cancels, but often need a tiny bit more brain power, as a patient opponent can counter you easily. Finally, in an anti-gank, you shine brightest, as canceling recoveries often means that while on the offense, you still have the defensive option, usually splitting a gank, no matter how many people there are, into multiple back-to-back 1v1s. This puts recovery cancels into the anti-ganker category and should be used very carefully. Next up, we have soft feints. I love soft feints, a widespread property which is used sparingly in For Honor. Soft feints let you cancel your current attack into a different attack. Now in ganks, soft feints are a hit or a miss. Their usefulness is often hinging on a stacking of properties. This basically means that on its own, soft feints are not great in a gank. In a team fight, you see more use, as you can often attack both opponents without letting up pressure on either one. However, this only works for target swappable attacks. Now in duels, soft feints show their true colors, forcing your opponent on their heels just to keep up with you, as well as giving you mind game advantage. It is huge. Now in anti-ganks, you can gain the same benefit as a team fight, with your opponents never truly knowing who you're going to attack, although its impact in an anti-gank is target swap reliant and susceptible to highly aggressive gankers, landing it in the duelist zone. One sandwich later and we are on pushback or stagger. It's a highly powerful, low impact property that, as the name implies, displaces your opponent by staggering them. This property has the ability to wall splat and can be exceptionally dangerous. However, it's used sparingly throughout For Honor, and without added properties, it is kind of a non-threat. In ganks, stagger can be very powerful, essentially extending how long you're vulnerable after being hit. In a team fight, its strength also shines as it has a dual purpose of confirming extra damage or stalling for a quick 2v1. In duels, Stagger is still powerful since at best you can gain free damage and at worst you go back to neutral, and Stagger in of itself has no downsides, and this continues to be true in an anti-gank as occupying an opponent in an animation is a great help when dealing with multiple people. Overall, this marks Stagger as a duelist property. And brings us to the end of part 3. I hope you all enjoyed, and leave your criticisms in the comments below. After all, we all play this game, so I'm sure that there's something that I miss. And until next time, farewell ladies and gents.